Welcome to Black Creatives in Liminal Spaces, where host Khadija Ali-Coleman dives deep into the intersectional worlds crafted by Black visionaries. This podcast is a vibrant tapestry, weaving together the arts, science, education, technology, and beyond. Join us for enlightening conversations that uncover the innovative ideas and unique perspectives of Black creatives who are not just dreaming, but actively reshaping our world.
Tongo Eisen-Martin is the author of 3 collections of poetry: Blood on the Fog, selected by the New York Times as among the best poetry of 2021, Heaven is All Goodbyes, and Someone's Dead Already. He served as the 8th Poet Laureate of San Francisco, California from 2021 to 2024. Acclaimed writer Claudia Rankine calls Eisen-Martin's work Resistance as Sound. His poetry touches upon topics ranging from the prison industrial complex to homelessness, from capitalist indoctrination to physical and spiritual blight. In addition to writing revolutionary poetry, Eisen-Martin is an educator who has taught creative writing in prisons and authored counterculture curriculum, including We Charge Genocide Again, a series of lesson plans to support students and teachers in grappling with state-sanctioned killing of Black people. In 2020, he co-founded Black Freighter Press to publish revolutionary works. A recipient of several awards, including the American Book Award, a California Book Award, and the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Literary Award, Eisen-Martin was awarded the 2025 Wyndham Campbell Literature Prize, a $175,000 unrestricted grant. So, as folks have heard in the introduction, Tongo, you are quite the man when it comes to superlatives and just acclaim. But as I shared with you earlier, what really strikes me when it comes to you as an artist is how connected you are to your community. And so I would love to know if you could just share how you came to be a writer. I know that you still do a lot of community work as a cultural worker, but how did you come into this craft of writing?
Um, and forgive me, I'm getting over a little bit of a respiratory infection. So if I start, if sound effects invade our conversation, I apologize. Um, but it was a knack. It was a knack I had up the sleeve, probably from an early age, just in that kind of what do you call it, like a proclivity for bouncy association, or just kind of, I was sensitive to words having a ring. I was sensitive to the kind of the subtitles that are running across people's shirts and running across buildings as far as like, well, what is actually happening here, or what is actually being said. And so that is a tiny bit of, a tiny bit of a head start, or a tiny bit of a hostage situation. I would say more important, or I would say like the most talented people I've seen, their their true superpower is they have kind of they have a more naked relationship to their compassion. And it's that kind of, this ability to easily dissolve yourself in your own personal territory in order to, or as you interact with other people's territories. I think, that goes a long way. And I kind of got it secondhand, as my mother is an incredibly big-hearted person. and also
Mm,
was and is a committed revolutionary. Um,
mm,
and in a way, we can say that really all the revolutionary is someone who understands they can't be a whole human being until everyone is a whole human being, and there are no whole human
mm.
beings under this mode of production. But being an '80s baby, I probably ran away from the knack 1,000 times, or in dangerous environments. Who wants to be a writer? you know, um, and I would extend the danger, like dangerous environments abound. Not just what some might consider an inner city. I mean, from the both sides of the velvet rope. Um, it's it's almost get little games of annihilation are constantly being
Right,
played and ritualized. So
right.
it was a while before poetry moved into kind of a central position in my understanding of myself or my evaluation of my day, um, which was actually a good thing in the long run because I spent, um, a lot of the formative years of my consciousness moving through anonymous trenches. So I was just the
What does
teacher.
that mean?
I'm just like the youth worker, the case manager, the alternative school teacher, the organizer, right?
Wait a minute,
Um,
wait a minute. What did you call that? Anonymous trenches.
yeah, I would
So
say
even
anonymous.
describing that is poetic. I love that. Tell me what that means. Why that? Why?
Well, it's simply like an intellectual life, a life of the mind that's not geared towards individual assertion or aggrandizement. Like, maybe your name might ring out in the city or something. Oh, that's that cool teacher. But you're not gonna get famous as like, and the objective is not to be famous as a teacher or just someone who works with,
Right.
really helps people come to themselves, come to
Yeah.
their own powers of really of directing their own education, and even better, directing a collective of education. As we know that, if you want any situation to be an exercise in liberation, then we all enter as co-creators. So, one, this was just healthy. It was healthy for me, and two, it I think it had an influence on my style as really it, it's kind of, I'd say my craft is a mind or kind of a set of minds, sometimes a peanut gallery of minds that are just trying to learn something, right? And so that I think that grounding has been has been like a good personality from our
Was
craft.
it was it through this work that you kind of that you begin to share your art? Because it's so interesting in how you describe your work in the anonymous trenches, which I will always now use forevermore. Because that resonates with me because that is, I'm a writer, but I always lead with being an educator and doing this type of cultural work. Like that
Mm.
to me embodies what my life mission is. And so how you articulated that is so meaningful to me. But when I think of your work from what I've heard you read and what I've read myself on the page, it seems that a lot of your work revolves around this interrogation of the environment that you're in, the things that you witness, that you bear witness to, and things that you have also been a part of, and in interrogating your complicit, um, involvement in what it is that is. It's always this conversation. So for you to articulate that is that's how you even view yourself, for these many existences that exist. Are you a Gemini by chance?
You know, I edge in, I creep in, I bleed into the Gemini season as I am the last day of the Taurus.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm on the cusp.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. So, but I was actually making a joke, but that's funny because you speak of these different perspectives, and that's what I get a lot in in your readings. Like it's many voices that are speaking, but it's just you. And it's many perspectives that are being deconstructed and being evaluated, but it's just you. And so to know that you wearing these hats, these different hats as a cultural worker, have informed your art makes sense. But I'm interested to know, when did this move come from these anonymous trenches to, I mean, it's not like you just write or you just Tongo, like you're all over the country, you're all over the world. And you're not even, are you even 40 yet?
Oh no,
Yeah.
I've passed the 40-yard line.
Oh, you passed it, but you're still a pretty young person for the amount of impact you have made with your work, the amount of work that you have put into the world, um, and to still have had these careers in these different roles as a cultural worker. So when did that, did this happen in tandem? Is this something that you
You know,
stopped doing? I can't imagine you doing both to the same degree as much as you do write and travel.
let me tell you how I got lucky. Or and first I want to say, you know, beautifully, you know who else? When they engage people, um, lead as cultural worker and not writer, and all they want to talk about is cultural work and not their adventures in poetry and art. Sonia Sanchez. If you ever blessed to have a conversation with Sonia Sanchez, poetry might not come up one time.
Wow, I
You know,
believe it. And you remind me of her. I'm sure people
oh,
have
right
told you
on,
that.
right
I
on.
know people have told
Humble.
you that a lot.
Yeah, humble. I'll take, you know, humble to humble for the stamp. Um, so I think, you know, well, or to get to your question, um, so it was, you know, so again, poetry was up the sleeve. I had a few incarnations. You know, I got a good education in the New Eurekan Poets Cafe. Um, you know, ran through there for many moons. Um, you know, the poetry scenes in the Bay Area, anchored by people like Mona Webb and Mark Bamuthi Joseph, and all kind of other people. Nazila, you know, the roll call would take forever. Um, but you know, so I had these, you know, I was not a stranger to a microphone, and every once in a while, I might end up in a publication. Um, but you know, not to pan out too wide, or even to pan out with a surety, as this is just a pot shot or a guess. But sometimes, you know, you're not finished baking. And I thank God I don't have to run around with the poems that I was writing then. What I would say a major turning point, I lived in Jackson, Mississippi for 2 years. A name though I do want everybody to learn is C. Lee McGinnis. He was a great, people have this idea or image of the South as somewhere that all the talented people escaped, but there's not so. And in fact, there are communities of artists and cultural workers that, though they could have left, decided to take a real, almost nationalistic stand, but I would say almost a revolutionary nationalistic stand about, uh, you know, uh, championing the culture there. So I'm down in Mississippi. Mainly, I'm doing organizing work. Celie McGinnis had a writing group, and he would, pick me up, take me over there. It was like my only activity when I first got to Mississippi. And it got me back in motion because I would stop writing for like 2 years. I would just not write and just be preoccupied with other.
You just not like what? No notes.
No
Nothing.
notes, not well, notes on, it would be notes on organizing, or notes, or it'd be preparing curriculums, or, it'd be that type of thing. Um, writing up writing up door-to-door surveys, this this type of thing. And so, I started writing again, and then my brother had a conversation with John Edgar Wideman, the great novelist, and my brother was telling John Edgar Wideman about Poetry Month, to which, no, I'm mistaken. It wasn't John Edgar Wideman. I don't know why that brother's on my brain lately. It was Walter Mosley, the devil in the blue dress guy. Yeah, I apologize.
Wow. No problem.
We don't have
what's
to.
the content
We don't
like?
have to edit.
So how were you all in community with each other? What was this?
So
What was happening?
on Fluke, my brother is an actor. Walter Mosley wrote a play, and my brother was in it, and he was hands-on. And so he would just be there, and they would just be in conversation. So this is all just secondhand convo to me. So my brother gets on the phone and is like, he said that you can't write a poem a day. You're supposed to write for at least 2-3 hours a day if you're going to call yourself a writer. So now, so every night I would put the timer on, and now I wasn't writing for an outlet, there was like 1 or 2 poetry events, or there was a poetry event. Oh, I'm missing I'm blanking on the name of there's this brilliant MC in Jackson named Pa Infamous. Another cat who I would say is like, one of these warriors for Mississippi. And he and his brothers had a spot for a little while, and there was poetry done there. So that was one thing you could do. And then once a month there was a kind of like an open mic that was everything. So it's you, the singer, the musician, even like, the comedian, whatever, you're thrown in there. And it was a good, crowd.
So
They
when
weren't
you
there.
say it's all of them all on stage at the same time, or they
Being
come up
called
one at
up
a time?
one at
Okay,
a
gotcha,
time.
gotcha.
One at a time.
Okay,
So
okay.
this is like the only 2 things you could really do at Jackson at the time. So is all that to say, like, there wasn't a major. I wasn't writing in order to get any public point across, And at the time, the majority of the poetry world was somewhere I didn't even know, and that's an unfortunate thing. There's a lot of there are a lot of it's behind a lot of poetry is unnecessarily behind a lot of closed doors.
Oh wow, yeah.
So really, I'm just writing for the muscle of writing, and what ends up happening is a kind of a new orientation of craft of writing for the lucidity of craft. Just trying to figure out what makes my mind tick, what makes this line vibrate. higher than this one, and I'm just poking around outside of paradigms of catharsis, outside of dances with euphoria, really just poking around language. And so it's from those basics that really this species of poem that has decently traveled at this point comes from. And so on Fluke, when the world started playing along with the poems, I have these basics to stick to. And actually what happened, it's funny, it came through a gig as an educator. I was teaching in this gateway program, basically for kids that needed to finish high school, but they were too old to go to high school. But it was also understood they're too old to go to high school, but they're too young to go to like some of these adult continuation schools. So someone had the decent idea to house um, like continuing high school programs within city colleges, and then transition them from those classes into regular classes. So I was just like teaching English. And it's funny, part of the question was like, how did writing come, or kind of asserting myself come through the 9 to 5? This was the first time, because, before that, I always really took the craft of teaching really seriously. And not to say that to not blend art and education is to disrespect that sanctity. Not to say that, but for me, I just, I'm so the Gemini in me has all these voices, man, but the Taurus in me is a worker,
Right, right,
and,
right.
and,
But
and wants to,
but you know what? I also hear you saying that you really enjoyed teaching, and so you
yeah,
wanted just how you really look at your writing and building that as a craft. You look at your teaching as being a craft as
yeah,
well, which is
absolutely,
important for you to say because a lot of people, especially people who refer to themselves as being artists or creatives, are teaching until, it's
right,
something to
right,
do
right,
until their break
right.
comes. And so from what I hear you saying is that you enjoyed it, or if not only enjoyed it, you took it seriously enough to want to do it
I,
well, and you
I
cared enough about
for,
your students to want to do it well.
for a long time, I considered it like peak revolutionary praxis. Like it had the political implications of, um, true consciousness raising, um,
Yeah.
and kind of in the front lines of, the social contradiction of between oppressed and oppressed. Like my start was teaching in jails. That was the first
Mm.
place I taught in juvenile hall, and then I taught for a long time in Rikers Island.
Oh, okay.
But so 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 in this, almost one of the last jobs I kind of had that wasn't, these kind of finite, teach here for a week, there for a day,
Mm.
this type of thing. I just was like, almost for the sake of pecking order. Like I just wanted to let the students know that they were in good hands. So I started saying
Oh,
poems to them just to, like listen to
yeah.
me. You know? And then it traveled a tiny bit around the school, like, nah, that guy got some good poems. So this kid comes up to me during lunch or something like that, and he's like, man, I heard you got good poems. Let me hear one. So I said the poem, and it was funny. The guy named Derek Fenner, who actually got me the job in the first place, he was standing right there. He heard the poem, and he was like, "Whoa, I didn't know you had it like that." He just knew me from teaching, actually from teaching in the Oakland Juvenile Hall, or it's Alameda County, but that's where all the Oakland kids get kidnapped too. Um, so he's like,
I
I have
love
a
your asides, by the way.
bro, right? He got sick those parentheses in there. Um,
Right.
but so he had a small press, and he said, "Man, let's publish a book." So put a book out through him. He had kind of motion, a little bit of motion in this the aforementioned literary world is behind closed doors, and it's
No,
just
I
he
absolutely love this, that this happened. This came through your teaching. This came
yeah
through your teaching. And
yeah yeah
if you never opened your mouth as a poet to your students, so you
uh,
basically
yeah
your teaching launched your poetry career. That is amazing.
yeah, and it was really one of those situations like he set up like two or three readings, and one thing just kept leading to another. And I tell
Mhm.
folks, especially when those and I understand the anxiety of career, but um one of the charities of poetry is that because it's not a commercially viable discipline, the top is not that far from the bottom, right? As opposed to like, if I would start to sing tomorrow and where Beyonce is, it's a long road, or it's a steep staircase up a mountain to climb. But
Right.
because there's no, and in general, though, there's definitely hegemonic consciousness, bourgeois thinking, white supremacy, all kind of things
Yes.
about.
All of
Uh,
that. All of that.
it's not like you don't literally have to deal with like gangsters.
Right.
So
Right.
you can kind of poem your way to a decent altitude, one reading at a time. You never
Yeah.
know who's in the room.
But that wasn't
Um,
what you, but that's, you know, what you're saying is though, that's not even what you started this for. You know,
nah,
you didn't start you didn't start this for any of that. It was part of your teaching practice. Your
I
poetry was
really,
part of,
I
yeah.
had, I had, I have no Machiavellian talent. I, I don't know how to network, and I had no idea what anything was supposed to look like, or I myself, I just take it one poem at a time.
Yeah, yeah,
I
you
take it
do.
one poem
Eh,
at a time and do right by, um, do right by the foundation of those lines, which is to, really live a revolutionary praxis and really, try to keep just certain habits of internal cultivation going as much as I can in both categories as much as I can help.
is that the writing that you speak of, the writing
No, I
for
mean
certain?
before you pick up the pen, just whatever
Mhm.
you have to do to make you a gentler person to yourself and others. And which
Mm.
is not a linear process by any means. And also
You
doing
said
right.
at
Uh,
I'm
I'm
sorry, but
sorry.
I'm going back to what you said at the very beginning when describing your mom, and what you
Mhm.
aspire to is just, being a revolutionary, is recognizing, helping people become their whole selves. And I'm paraphrasing. Can you tell me how you said it?
Yeah, that's basically what I said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
understanding that we can't be whole selves. See, we 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 define ourselves. We choose a human nature that is appropriate to the bigger pictures that we are a part of. And that's why you need a revolutionary change. Because yes,
Mhm.
there's a certain amount of autonomy, or at least autonomy of development. I can govern my internal evolution, my mental evolution, and in the face of anything, regardless of any type of institution, any prison, any job, any gig, anything, I can direct how what I believe is what the priority could be. Basically, I can prioritize the people, right? But ultimately, we don't get to a new day until the obstacle course itself is transformed, because that's what identity, that's what worldview is synthesized from. So, so yes, both I would say a revolutionary process is one that is internal and collectively internal, as far as, we can grow, we can learn without having to go outside. But we also have to go outside and dismantle these dismantle, these the apparatus of power, monopoly of violence, and other institutions within this superstructure that serves ruling class dominance.
This, when I listen to what you're saying and what you said so far, what comes up, you opened with talking about your relationship to words and the words around you, but the world around you as being one where you've been able to be compassionately immerse yourself compassionately. So to me, that's empathy. You've talked about being gentler. You talked about the want for people to be and to find their whole selves. And so it's this automatic uh empathy that you have for others and for the world, and never once have you made distinctions between who should have this empathy or this ability to be their whole self, which I find remarkable. You don't lead with this identity of I am such and such and I want this for such and such. You lead with I am human and therefore this is what I want for other humans. And so as a praxis, and we talk about liberation, I don't think that that's the penultimate, right? Is to identify as a human and recognize the humanity in those around you.
Mm.
When you talk about, you're the poet laureate of San Francisco, you just got a six-figure fellowship opportunity. You just had a baby, the most beautiful and delicious little baby. I had the pleasure
Yes, it is.
of seeing when I ran into you at AWP. My daughter and I were just so thrilled to have seen you. We didn't realize how tall you were because we've only met you virtually. And so, and so you're like 7 feet tall and this little delicious little baby who you have taught well because she knows how to do a fist bump already. But how has this approach changed in any way in these few has it how is she a year yet, or is she
Year and a half.
over? Okay,
Year and a
yeah. So
half.
she
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
even been on this planet for 2 years. So how
Yeah.
has life changed, since she's come into existence?
Well, man, I mean, as you know, um, a huge or significant part of my psyche has been completely rewired. And I almost forget what my internal life used to be when 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 you hour one or two, you realize you're now in a movie that never pauses. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so, and there's also, you know, it's also it's an interesting responsibility to to allow transform you when you are literally the earth for a being. She does not know the ground. You are the only ground, or her parents are the only ground she knows, literally. Like you are the hands of the universe. You are how the universe has chosen to physicalize her environment. So it's just starting from that station um, is incredibly transformative. And that's not to say that it's just all magical, and we know that, but
Right.
what it, and I got some great advice from fathers I've really respected, who told me that one, they teach you how to love them. So, kind of approach it as a learner. Two, don't, just completely lean into it. Don't try to have any of the other hats. Let it all go and just build that rapport. Just being 100% here for this baby's engagement, right? And not, or even if it's kind of just a mental position or an emotional position of not, oh, I can't wait to put this baby down so that I can do the XYZ, right? XYZ will get accomplished, sort of, in its own, in a diminished capacity. But my orientation to my concept of myself and what I need to be doing is all, just this task of keeping her safe and entertained. um, uh, but the effect it had on craft, it turned me from the hare into the tortoise, right? Because I was, I used to be, I would put things off, and then, get to a period of kind of concentration. Um, but with the responsibilities, or especially, hear tell of this, like the first 5 years, it's just like, okay, I'm always returning to it, So she's asleep. Let me
It's
get
so
to, you know what I
interesting
mean?
because you say
Yeah,
the first 5 years, which you're still within, and people will tell you, or you'll falsely believe that, okay, after this period, it'll get easier, and
yeah.
it won't get easier. It'll be a new task. It's very
Nah,
akin to
no.
what we know about the like the Greek Odysseys,
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
complete the first task, okay, on to the next one.
yeah. You're not getting home for a long, long time. No, I only mean to say, when she goes to kindergarten, then I have a guaranteed, you know what I mean. Then I got some
You know,
guaranteed hours.
and that's what you say now, but it strikes me, you strike me as someone I would not be surprised if you were homeschooling, if you decide to homeschool, which then
Hey,
in
or at
itself would
least
be
going up, or I might at least get a job at the school. You know what I mean? Just to make sure
right.
everything is what it's supposed to be, or even
Right. Yeah. I
be
saw you
be
with that
part of
baby.
creating the
That
school. Oh yeah, you
right. I
already
do not
know.
see that. I do not see that little baby going anywhere a far distance away from you. That is so funny.
Nah.
I could so easily see you being in her school. Daddy's a teacher here now.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway,
for real. Yeah,
So
you can
so
act like you don't
as
know me if you want to. I won't be offended. But I see you and I see everybody
that's
else in
right.
here. Yeah.
That's hilarious that you already planning that. The baby is a year and a half, so she needs to be prepared so that she's gonna see that daddy. But
Hey, I feel,
I want to.
elementary schools need poetry too.
Well, it's so funny because I can totally relate to that. I think on Monday, what came up in my Facebook memories was a picture of me and my daughters. I homeschool my daughter off and on through P through 12, but when she was about 5, she was in a class, and this a picture that came up in the memories was me in the class. I had done the activity with her, and I'm still Facebook friends with her teacher from what that 16
Mm,
years ago. And
mm,
so I can totally relate to that because I
mm.
was surely up in the place when she was in school. But that's what, I think that being a parent and having that type of care for your parenting practice just speaks to what you what is evidenced in your teaching and in your art. And so you've given us in this teaching some really good gems in terms of your journey, recognizing that you know what your art is not detached from your humanity and from the work that you do in your community. Um,
Mm.
and that you really have been in the right place at the right time to have the opportunities that have really made you um, be pushed in these facing positions where folks are now recognizing the gem of an artist that you are. And I would have to say that I'm very stunned to learn that you didn't grow up studying the archives of the Black arts movement, and because you just have that vibe. You're just such, um, you know. I've done symposiums. I've done a lot of study around the Black arts movement. I was born, during the Black arts movement in the 70s. And so a lot of that was a soundtrack of my childhood. My parents are the quintessential Black parents that changed their names to
Mm.
African names, and so then I come into the world, Khadija Zakia Ali-Coleman. But I would have bet that that was what your trajectory was. And when you talk about that you literally got your feet wet in this poetry practice through performance and in the South, in Mississippi of all places, it's
Mm.
just it really turns us on our head in terms of what we think of the genesis stories of some of our greats, but also what liberation work looks like, what building our craft looks like. And so I would really love it if you could end with just giving some advice, and maybe in giving some advice to people who are listening to this and wondering how can they be so attuned to their work as a writer, who writes in with a praxis of liberatory practice.
Mm.
What are some of those concessions that you've had to make or you've been asked to make that you have avoided or that you feel were necessary for you to be the artist that you are? That's
I
a
got
lot.
you.
I see your face. Is
I
that
got,
a lot?
now I got you. I'm just trying to, all right, I'm just trying to, hopefully I can, do right by the questions. Um, I mean, okay, so number one, well, actually, in no order of priority, but one, understanding that the poet is best when the poet is a nobody. It's the nobody's um, view that will tell you the most about society. In fact, there's a great book called The Corpse Walker. I see this cat who was a poet and did time behind a poem. But he wrote he did this book of interviews where he would just interview like the public bathroom custodian or the corpse walker, which is there's this one place in China where with these certain people in China where part of their funeral process is actually somebody has to walk the corpse to the burial place, and
No
it's
way.
actually now it is like a profession. This cat just walks
What?
corpses to the burial places. So he just interviews these random people with these random professions that professions that most people wouldn't. Nobody wants to be a public restroom custodian when they grow up. But gets just through normal conversation gives you these um very like kind of sober, sophisticated, trustworthy snapshots of society. Um and like in uh, what they assert now in quantum physics, that like in observing, like the experimenter actually changes reality through observation. Just in
Yes, yes,
observing,
yes.
physical matter behaves differently according to who is looking at it. Definitely in as poets up here in the more macro world, you change you change the material through your viewpoint, especially when you have this objective, you know, some kind of elevated station, or even an
Mm.
elevation in relation to other poets, right?
Right,
And it's
right,
not to
right.
say like that the careerist voice in your head is not necessarily nonsensical. It just should never be dominant. And there's a good book called The Healers by this Ghanaian novelist named
I
Ali-Coleman.
wait, oh my,
You already
yes,
know.
that's my man. That's my book. I love that book.
Man, right, that's the book, and that is the guy for real. And so you remember, a part of a big part of a healing process for an individual is to get them to solidify their true self. And that the problem is we have multiple selves, and naturally, and that's fine. The problem is when we choose the wrong self to make our kind of dominant avatar. So cool, have these other selves, have these other preoccupations, have these other priorities, but keep them in the ghost realm, right? So I think, back down here with the poems, you want as much as you can, you want to you actually want to dissolve yourself. So that by like the end of the poem, even and it's not to say you don't use the I. I'm not saying, oh, so there should not be one I in your poem. You can I a poem to death without that I being the path to self-aggrandizement or self-absorption, or you know whatever other projection. So like number one, like be the nobody. You dissolve your personal territory, you get your hands on everybody else's territory, and so you can dance with uh dance an analysis that is truer, and more expansive, and actually more musical, interesting. Um, Practically, I would say, again, through secondhand Walter Mosley, like put that timer on behind you, 2 hours, do what you got to do, and keep a critical conversation going with yourself, is just, on what poetry is, in a real way, in, in a non-fortune cookie way, I promise you. Every poet really does recreate what poetry is, because it's such an internal craft or non-physical craft. And so we literally we can't, it's not, we don't have the same rules of relativity.
Mm-hmm.
The speed of light in my head is different than the speed of light in your head. What I'm
Mm.
imagining, I imagine something, I transmit it. What gets imagined on the back end they're different.
Mm-hmm.
If I say
Mm-hmm.
she sings on the corner, the song I'm hearing, you're gonna hear something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The timbre of her
She
voice is
looks
gonna be
different, and
different.
I'm sure,
Right.
yeah, she looks different.
Everything can be different. So, you are recreating the craft. And from that beautiful potential, and really kind of that fact that it's a guide, um, you wanna, you know, you wanna live that process, and you live it dialogically, right? So just keeping that dialogue going between yourself and yourself, like what is actually happening here, keep this, so that kind of like the quest for lucidity is crucial. Also, it's the life you live before you pick up the pen that determines, what you can do on the page. And in a way, don't worry about your poems achieving something like, okay, I'm going to write the poem that changes the way my mother looks at things. Or I'm going to write the poem that ignites the revolution. Or I'm going to write the poem that is just, that defeats all other poets. you know, excuse
Right.
me. You want to mind how you're living before you pick up the pen. Once the pen gets in your hand, it's just about experimenting, exploring your potentials for language, and
I love
exploring
it.
your potentials for understanding the reality and the various excuse me modes of reality. So, um, like Coltrane, somebody asked Coltrane, "How do I become a better horn player?" He said, "Become a better person," and that's real. So keeping those things in mind, and also I would say too, if you have, if you're inclined to, be a revolutionary poet, just be a revolutionary and learn revolution on its terms. Learn the history of revolution, some of I would say laws of revolution, but we could probably say more the probabilities of revolution, on its terms, and engage, outside of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Cultivate yourself outside of your comfort zone. Because I know the temptation, like especially, you big and bad on the microphone or big and bad on the page, you want to stay there. But nah, go do what you're awkward at. That all goes into, your
I can
cultivation just as
attest.
a human being.
Yeah, I can
Hmm.
attest to that. That all of everything that you've said resonates with me, but that 100% resonates with me. In my big old age, I became a poet laureate of my county without a book and
Mm,
decided I needed to have a book. But that relationship with the page was so different than what I had been cultivating as a performer. And
mm,
the vulnerability and the type of movements that writing for the page kind of led me, it's my doggy, just became just a different way of life in a good way. And that advice that you give, because I don't think that I would have been as apt to just change the direction of what have been doing if I didn't get another role. Um, but I definitely think that it's made me all the better in both roles as a performer and as a writer for the page. So I think
right
that's
on.
excellent advice. I think
Uh,
that's
oh,
excellent.
and my bad. I did want to also say concerning sacrificing kind of bourgeois endeavor for, you know, uh, really just trying to stay a human being. I got lucky in that, like, I'm more terrified of being a tool of oppression than I am of being, you know, of getting a bourgeois stamp. It's funny,
Yeah,
man, because you already know, like,
I know
the
so much. Like
psychology is
you speak in my language.
people wouldn't. It's funny, like people. I mean, I feel like my poems, you know, they pull their weight, and you know, you can drop me off anywhere. I could say some poems, and people might dig it, but you already know, like, how you're presented goes a long way, you know. Um, and but it's just like, yes, like a kind of obscurity, or the perception, or the anxiety, feeling like you're in obscurity, can be, you know, can get emotional. But even more terrifying and more exhausting is romps into kind of like onto the bourgeois playing fields. And ultimately, as we see, you know, you're literally on the same planet as Gaza. You're literally on the same planet as the Congo. You're on the same planet as parents getting kidnapped on the street, who really are just people with jobs that most people don't even want to work. You're on the same planet as mothers being separated from their babies. You're on the same planet as kids getting left in the car while their parent gets dragged away, right? And so what is July 4th to the slave? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What is an award?
Yeah.
Um, what is an award what is an award to a bystander,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
or to an accomplice? Because to
Yeah.
not intervene is to, and there's,
Yeah.
you know, I think, you know, the illusion of sideline is shrinking. The side, even there might have been real sidelines, are shrinking. And so there's going to be nowhere for you to hide, especially not in the mirror. Uh,
Mm.
when you prioritize your individual adventure over, you know, participating critically in the historical process, you know. Um, and so I just, you know, I kind of got luckier again. You know, this might just be a family trait. I can't really live with myself when I prioritize individual, you know, um, individualism. Because individualism really, you know, they paint it like, you know, the mythologies of capitalism that always, you know, kind of get out what you put in and da 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 da. But really, individualism is a selective humanization or selective dehumanization, to say all of this is cool. Like, all of this is like, would you let the history play out the same way so that you could be whoever you think you are? Would you have Europe exterminate all these millions of indigenous folks? Uh, Put millions of, you know, really exterminate through labor and otherwise millions of African folk, right? Is that all that worth it for you to be who you are today? We move like it is, and this bounces back and has an effect on your consciousness, and it will have
Yes.
an effect on your poetry, you know, because you're not dealing with all of reality, you
Right.
know. Like, you know, I kind of jumped in. To a certain extent, I jumped in the fray. Even the first time that they were separating, you know, with the kids was going in the cages, I just felt like
Yeah.
I couldn't call myself an adult if
Yeah.
I'm in driving distance of 3-year-olds in cages. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So, when you order to say, it doesn't even have to be that kind of like heroic a decision. Just open your mind and heart to what's really going on. You know, like, who can I possibly be if I don't at least try? You
Yeah.
know,
But
and
you
also,
know,
and I'm sorry, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
One tiny little thing.
Mm.
What they successfully stripped away from us culturally is a revolutionary optimism. Cats want to know the difference between us and them in them Black Panther times. They thought they were gonna win. They thought it was going to be a revolution. Give them 5 years, there will be a revolutionary government in this so-called United States. You know what I mean? They stripped it from us, right? They, you know, through this frankly cultural war that we lost not just our peoples, we lost real military wars with our revolutionaries, but what continued, and a big part of the loss of that, you know, because really the destabilization of the base, destabilization of the masses of people that cough up these revolutionaries are supposed to continue to cough up revolutions, or really we are supposed to be, you know, revolutionaries gets completely destabilized through cultural war. So that our value system that we've internalized is conducive to our domination. And so 2 things to embrace. 1, this is unacceptable, right? Unacceptable. There's no life on a planet where people get murdered like this and incarcerated like this and brutalized like this. And we know that this is not new. This is what they've been rehearsing this on us this whole time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And they will, and guess what? We will be the next contestant on The Price is Right any day now, because, you know, please believe the target they lust after most in this so-called country is us. The ones, so we are libidinally, I don't know if that's the word, they are passionately obsessed with our destruction, domination. It's what they can't wait to get back to us. So you think this is going to end with just so-called, you know, with undocumented folks and all this, or you think it's going to end with some people half a world away? No. It's coming right to your living room. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So we do well to, so number 1, this is not tenable, and number 2, it can be defeated. History is the graveyard of empires. This thing is they falling off even with nobody pushing, besides their terrible economic decisions, right? So we can win.
Right.
Embrace those two facts, and, you know, adjust your psyche accordingly.
I love that.
Sorry,
And
I
you
just
know, I think no, I think I'm glad that you were able to finish that, because I think you are, and you are evidence. The fact that we are together in something like this, the fact that you exist, and others like you, a few, but others exist, is the fact that there is hope, the fact that we are capable of winning, the fact that they did not win and did not kill and destroy that out of all of us, you know, and those of us who have the empathy that you speak of, the compassion, the humanity, the care for other people, um, may not succeed in making everyone become exactly like that, but will succeed in winning, essentially, because everyone is not dead to this thing that we call humanity and empathy. Um, and I have thoroughly enjoyed being in conversation with you.
no,
The
appreciate you.
heart that is present in your poetry, is present in your conversation and in your thoughts. And you know, you're a poet in all that you do, in your parenting practice and your teaching practice. And I just hope that we continue to see you in spaces. And I really want to encourage our listeners and our viewers to become familiar with your work if they haven't. You're so gracious. So even if someone wasn't to just have any of your books just laying around, they could go to YouTube and Google you and to see you um, to see you in action. But I wanted to ask you, as we close out, do you have a piece, anything that you'd like to share, just closing out,
Mhm.
and we end on that?
Um, these societies, they wander together like hopeful drops of a virus. Citizen testaments bent on offering me a nation of breadwinners to hold me back. Like it's a Brinks. I wrinkle the concrete sometimes, like flesh. My Martin Luther King permanence, turning away from a podium into the reeds like God is the dangerous twin. Black August to the mountaintop, balcony on my bedroom floor. You know, they steal you from the earth itself and suspend you in your broken neck from their fullest euphoria. From the loyalty oath of their great superstition, loyalty oath of their agrarian reform, I'll return to my mother completely disrespected. For peeling the heat off of purgatory, they kill poets like me. Walk me away from my poems, never to be heard from again. In this final industrial complex of bloodlines picked over, picked through, the sport and spiritual death of your devil at least half made. Police become a pretty word. I'm reading a lynch mob shoestrings like they were tea leaves, teaching you how to write about cities. It's the 25th century in the mirror, people. Tyranny against your chump change your chump to be mocked even with a gun in your car. A cubit of needlework. Spelled tune for the proletariat, the relapse ministry. Talented people curled up in a fetal position next to a diamond, dying. Just another service day in the theatrics of tea house fascism, in a bouquet of surveillance cameras, in the poverty of God. New blue eyes, corpses of water, a newly potted presidency. One big shiny coin if you ask, an animated capitalism, another non-literal voice, killing is white freedom. The deification of hyphens, medicine bread and picture shows, great protesters in LA, guests of our ink, job kicking roses in the graveyard, DC mink, like the stone torn in half, dependent advances, man. Despite CIA guideposts, despite non-African past and futures, a metaphorical but not surreal day in a horn-ridden life, horn player improvising king. Like a radio prize fight featuring Shango himself, a real hand sweeps the land of racism. Now return to the ground. Now I make progress with the gun. On my mother Emmanuel, they put on music that evening. A swinging type body language for you to drink with fermented $5 bills for your body language, some applause, my past stomach lining. Neither a good thing nor a bad thing. Like being psychic on the way to a lethal injection. It'll sit you down with Lady Day. Lady Day leading youth who surrendered their souls to Africa too soon. Polythought floating in a cup of water, she saved me. Accessing my stomach, accessing the love of the American lynched. Coast leaves wooden avalanche into the wrist. Our mother Emmanuel, avalanche into the sharp keys, pain, or the deal you make with pain. A piano makes sense for them, laying hands on the world gradually, adjusting the bended necks on the streets of the north. Travel sailing in pain, repeating pain in the north. Pin trigger fingers on that piano if harmony would have me. Putting 100 fights on every direction off for the Lady Day, leaning on trees again, recruiting the countryside itself, saying, lay your plan out on this lightning. Make your poems a corner pocket of men. I've greeted the blues itself. America may clean my dead body, but will never include me. There goes the poet, killing without killing. Never mind this little painting of your language. May I be a meaningful lynching. A crow's passing, good and dead by the afternoon.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, Tongo.
Respect.
Thank you. Whew.
Right.